Hello friends, I'm out here in Sunset Cliffs, which is an area of San Diego that I absolutely love. That's where my favorite beach is. And it is low tide right now, and look at how low the tide is. You can see behind me, this beach is typically not even there, or most of it is not there, I should say. So yeah, it's super cool. And you know, I've been kind of hibernating a little bit in my own thoughts and processing some emotions and just the things that I'm going through right now in my life. And it was so nice to get a check-in from Kathleen. So Kathleen, thank you so much for thinking of me and checking in on me. I really appreciate you. And you prompted me to just show up in front of the camera and give you guys a quick little update. The thing that I've been grappling with lately is the topic of guilt, and it is so much more deep-seated than I realized at first. So I want to just talk to you guys a little bit about that and how I'm experiencing guilt and how I'm letting go of it. First of all, let's just acknowledge this beautiful moment. It is amazing. I see seagulls soaring pretty high and just kind of like gliding in the breeze that is coming on shore, and it's just beautiful. So here I am thinking about guilt. I've been thinking about guilt for the last couple of days and what guilt has done to me in my life. And it's really interesting how far back it actually goes. So it pretty much started at birth. Even though I didn't know it back then. But I was born into a Catholic family. My parents are both immigrants from Austria. They moved to Switzerland after World War II, and they had nothing. They came from nothing. Both my parents had an 8th grade education. My dad became a barber, hairdresser, and was one of the first to actually do the master exam in Switzerland. So he was really super talented. Hairdresser, barber, and my mom was a cook. So she was actually, when she was 14, after she completed 8th grade, and much of her schooling years she actually spent in like the bomb shelters, basically, where she was tending to silkworms, or silkworms, the silkworms that they made the parachutes from. They actually cultivated the silk, and that was her main job during her school years. It was just basically providing silk for the parachutes for the war. And so anyway, I'm digressing. Here we go. So bear with me. So anyway, my parents came to Switzerland in their 20s, and my mom was 20 actually when she moved to Switzerland, with a little cardboard suitcase and a few belongings in it, a few changes of clothes. That was all she had. And she showed up off a train and didn't know anyone. And she actually went to Salvation Army, and until she passed away, she's always been super grateful for the Salvation Army, because they were actually the ones that helped her out right as she got to Switzerland and was looking for work and didn't have a place to stay and all of that. So long story short, my parents both were immigrants, working class, from very poor upbringings, and I was an accident. So I wasn't really meant to be born, and that hasn't really affected me very much until recently, where I realized that as much as my mom always showed me and demonstrated me her love, I realized that I wasn't really meant to be born. And so there was a level of guilt that came with that. And because she, in her late 30s when she had me, my dad was becoming more and more irresponsible, and he got heavily into drinking and really became a heavy-duty alcoholic. He passed away when I was only 21, but my mom realized that she wasn't going to be able to count on him for financial and emotional support, and she was basically on her own. And then she had me as a new baby, and I have 2 older siblings. So she went to become I don't even know what you call that here, hospitality. Like, you had to have a permit in Switzerland to have a restaurant. I don't even know what that was called. It was called Wirtepatent. So whatever that is here, I honestly don't know. but it was a sort of a certification, so she needed to study and do that, and that's how she was able to make ends meet. She didn't just want to work as a cook. She knew that if she had a business of her own, she would be able to survive much better, and sure enough, she did. And she started with nothing but debt. At 40, she had like $40,000 of debt, which was a lot of money back then. It was Swiss francs, obviously, at a high interest rate, and she diligently paid that off, and started making a living for herself, and wasn't in need of having to rely on my dad so much anymore. My dad had his own baggage to carry as well, and a lot of trauma from the war. He was literally in the woods in Austria fending for himself as a 16-year-old with a rifle in hand, scared out of his mind, So there's a lot of trauma that my dad also experienced, and my mom too. Both of them were war children, basically, and had my mom's home was occupied by the Russians for 2 years straight. They lived in the basement, and my aunt, her older sister, half-sister, actually they had to basically hide her in a wine barrel so that she wasn't going to get raped by the Russians, because she was already like in puberty and looked more like a woman. My mom was a late bloomer, so she still looked totally like a kid, like she was 10 or 11 years old, hadn't even hit puberty yet. But anyway, so that's one aspect of it, that when I was coming into this world and I realized my mom was really stressed and was up late at night and just fending for herself, and also having to deal with me, I became independent very fast, and I think I grew up really quickly too. Even though I had 2 older siblings, they too, my sister is 8 years older and my brother is 12 years older than me. So they weren't really truly siblings to me. I didn't have like a what you would think a sibling relationship with them. They were more like adults to me already, So I was kind of like an only child in a way. But I also knew that I was a burden to my mom. So I started working very early on. I was babysitting. I was always hustling somehow. And then at 16, I started working at McDonald's during high school, and I paid for my exchange year to Australia, which I will make a video about really soon. I came up with the money for that. I saved up for it. I worked at the very first McDonald's in Switzerland, in Zurich, in Old Town, which was a neat experience. But yeah, I made ends meet. I also always, I didn't want to be a financial burden to my mom. So that was a guilt that I carried with me throughout my life, really, even though my mom was very loving as she could be within the circumstances she was in, Then I dealt with the guilt from my siblings, who thought that I was totally spoiled rotten, which I didn't think I was. I grew up in a really, really modest home with no central heating. I remember sleeping with mittens and with a hat in the winter because I could see my own breath in my bedroom. I had ice flowers growing on my window. That's how cold it was in my room, and it was and my mom always said, don't run the heater, it's too expensive. And so it was something that really, I was raised super frugally, and it just became a way of life, I didn't really want to have a lot of needs because I knew those needs would create a burden to others. And so I became self-sufficient really early on. I didn't want to go to college right away. I didn't really know what for, and I wanted to travel. That was my biggest thing. And so I started working. I traveled, first of all, right out of high school. I went to South America, traveled a lot. I'll tell you about my travels on another video. But so I also felt kind of like that guilt from my siblings. And then I met my husband when I was 24. I was almost 25 when I met him. And what was interesting is that I didn't realize that at the time, of course, but he was a lot like my dad. And I didn't realize that, though. He was very emotionally unavailable a lot of times. At first, he was all head over heels, and it was just like the perfect love story. But he became more and more distant and emotionally unavailable, and that also made me feel guilty, and I didn't want to have needs. I didn't really voice my needs, and a lot of times it was hard to express them, and that's for another video as well. But it was just tough. It was tough for me to really have needs and own my own needs and be worthy of my needs. So that was just something that I was always struggling with, and just recently it just really occurred to me that now I feel guilty too, because I'm breaking up my marriage. I have said that I no longer want this marriage, and now I'm guilt-ridden because of that, because I have 4 kids with this man, and you know, we've been together for almost 3 decades, 28 years, and it's really hard because I feel like I'm also guilty of like breaking up a marriage that I could have tried harder to make work. But I realized I've worked really hard on it for many, many years, and I realized that no matter how much effort I would have put into it, it just wouldn't have worked. It was never enough, and my needs just were never really important. And so now that I've put myself first, I do feel a little bit selfish about it. I feel guilty about it, and it makes me really question why I have this so much guilt in me. Why do I experience this guilt in me? And I just think that it's just something I need to unpack even more. So this is just a start as I'm working through this. And my kids, of course, you know, my youngest, I feel like she's resenting me a lot for breaking up the family and you know, putting myself first. But I know that over time she will also understand me. And I do want to be that role model for my 2 girls. My oldest is a girl, my youngest is a girl, and the 2 boys in the middle. I want to show them that we are worthy of living our own best life, you know, that we can do this, and that we need to do this, and that we should do it. And the longer I think about all that, the more I recognize how important it is for me to actually live through that. And today I actually happened to talk to my older daughter about this, and it was so nice and reassuring to hear that she is on my page. She does understand me. She wants me to live my best life, and it was just such a nice moment for me. It made me very emotional to recognize that she does get me. She gets what I've been sacrificing all these years, and that she does want me to be happy, and she wants me to live my best life and live it on my terms and live it the way I was meant to be living my life. She recognizes the sacrifice of the many years that I've given up for them, for the family, for the kids, and it was really nice to hear that. It really, really warmed my heart, because it kind of relieved that guilt a little bit too. And I'm really glad that I brought it up to her. At first I was like, yeah, should I even talk about that? Excuse me. So yeah, I'm really glad I brought it up to her. And to get the appreciation and the understanding from her, it really meant a lot to me as well. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now. It's just a matter of working through all these levels of guilt, coming from my husband, coming from my children, some of my children, especially the younger ones. And I can't blame them, because they don't fully get what it means to give up, you know, a lot of time for a marriage and a family. They're not there. And so it's hard for them to even want to relate to that. And I don't blame them at all, because they just don't, they can't really truly understand it yet. But I know that they love me, and I know that I love them, and my kids are my world. I mean, they mean everything to me, and I would do anything for them. But at the same time, I recognize too that I've raised them to become self-sufficient adults. I don't need to be their mom by their side every single day. I wanted to raise future adults. I didn't want to raise adult children, you know, that are still kids, that don't know how to function in this world, that can't be self-sufficient. I want them to wean themselves off of me, you know, like that's when I know I've done a good job as a mom, if they're actually self-sufficient, then they can be on their own and be thriving on their own. And I'm here to cheer them on all along and support them if they have a rough patch in their lives, which they will. I know it's a given. But I'll always be there for them. And I know that our relationship will change over time too, as this divorce continues, and I'm starting to build my own life again. All of this will fall into place. I'm certain of it. And I really do have the best of hopes inside of me for a really good life. I feel like I do deserve it, even though I'm still plagued with guilt. I know my own goodness and I know my worth. I just don't always believe in myself as much as I should. And I'm just letting you know how I feel right now. And I hope that this resonates with you as well. I hope that I'm giving you a little bit of hope and being as transparent as I can be right now. I really want you to know that you're such an important part of this whole journey for me. I know that I haven't really been putting myself out there very much. I haven't been showing up very much lately, but I will do more of that as I work through some of my challenges right now. But yeah, it is a process, and I know it's not something I can resolve in a day or two or a year or two. It's been almost 3 decades of my life, the greater chunk of my life. And there's a lot of unpacking that I still have to do. And I'm so glad you're here coming along with me on this journey. And I thank you so much for being here and helping me work through this. And any of your comments that you want to share will really mean the world to me, because right now it's an isolating process. And this is one of the reasons why I started my channel, is that I wanted to put myself out there as raw and as real as it gets, and as transparent, whether some people like it or not. I want to be myself. I'm showing up for you the way I really am. And it's not always easy, but this is really who I am. And you will see more and more of the real me as I'm working through this process. So I will be back soon, I promise. Thank you for listening, and any input you might have to some of the things I've shared. I'm still working on letting go of the guilt, but if you have any suggestions on that, I would love to hear from you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon.